all in the IBM Cloud, which is really going to allow you to start gaining insights right away instead of spending weeks or even months just setting up your infrastructure. Now, before we start, I want to go through just a little bit of some webinar logistics for you. Joining me today on the conference is my counterpart, Brad Rowan from IBM. Brad is going to be monitoring the chat room for questions during the webinar. So the first question is usually, where's the chat room? You can post questions by clicking on the chat section icon on the left-hand side there, also called the meeting stream. Just click it on the left, and down at the bottom you can enter a question and press the enter button, and that will be submitted. Brad's going to, as much as he can answer during the session, he will, but we're also going to leave time at the end to answer any additional questions. So with that, let's get started. All right. So I want to start quickly by setting the scene and talking about what we're seeing as IBM in the market today and from what customers are demanding from analytics. First one is a focus on reducing costs. And I think we see this everywhere. We know that our clients have to reduce costs of operations, but they also need to have the right workloads on the right cloud, whether that's a public cloud or whether that's a private cloud either being secured on someone else's cloud network or private being local on-premise in somebody's data center. They need this to become efficient. Secondly, we're seeing the need for access of all types of data. Many of us have been very familiar with the need to process structured and unstructured data, but we're moving away from seeing a hard split between structured and unstructured and really seeing more of a single data fabric. Thirdly, we're seeing our customers trying to figure out how to take advantage of things such as artificial intelligence and machine learning to make these components that go across everything that they're doing. There's a desire to personalize experience and optimize operations by using these components. And finally, we see our customers looking for ways to rapidly design, deploy, maintain, and collaborate when they're building their applications. So how do we as IBM address these needs? Well, we like to focus on what we call 5 essential elements that every customer we think needs to get right in order to satisfy their analytical needs. So we start with the data science and machine learning. And we have this drawn the way it is because that kind of goes across our entire portfolio. It involves embracing new ways to developing insights and streamlining operations. You'll see a little bit of that today when I demonstrate our data science experience so you can see the collaboration aspects of it. Next is our open source. Everything that we build is either built on open source or involves open source components with it. It's really, customers are seeing a need to commit to openness because they want to leverage things like Hadoop and Spark so that they can get the benefits of the speed and the innovation that normally comes with open source products. So within this, we then see 3 components that we need to work together to produce the analytic results that are needed. One is a unified governance, and this is something that's really key. It's really important that we to enable better insights, we also need to enable compliance. And this is to make sure that users and developers and analysts have access to the right data at the right time, but also users that aren't authorized are not able to get to potentially sensitive information. The second is hybrid data management. This is that single data fabric that I talked about before, managing both structured and unstructured data, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's on-premise, being able to see it in both manners, no matter where you are. And finally, there's the data analytics and visualization. This is what you need to empower everyone, not just a few specialists, to make your data-driven decisions quickly and easily. Now, for today, we're going to focus on 2 of these. We're going to focus on the data science piece, and we're going to focus on the hybrid data management piece. We're going to talk about IBM Big SQL, which is our SQL on Hadoop product, which allows us to query data across structured and unstructured data and other data sources. And then our data science experience, which is really our environment for data scientists and analysts that allow for collaboration and allow for a rich set of open source tools all in one place. So, and really what it is we see these components, they help IBM bring data science, to the world as an open platform. And that brings us to a special announcement that we made earlier this month. So IBM has partnered with Hortonworks to bring the best of Hadoop and data science together. In this, when we announced this in mid-June, Hortonworks has agreed to adopt our data science experience as its key data science platform. They're also going to adopt IBM Big SQL as its SQL engine on Hadoop for complex analytics. And in return, IBM is going to leverage the Hortonworks HDP core as its core Hadoop distribution that will also come with Big SQL and integration with data science experience. So really what that does is it provides us a best-in-class data science experience and improved access to data on Hadoop with Big SQL. These products, Big SQL today is already offered on top of Hortonworks HDP, so nothing changes as today. It's also available currently on Big Insights and will continue to be so through Big Insights as we transition into using Hortonworks HDP as our core Hadoop distribution. Now, I've talked about these two products and how they're being integrated as part of this agreement. And I'm going to show you a little bit about these environments today and demonstrate them. But let me just talk quickly and go into a little bit deeper talk about both IBM Big SQL and IBM Data Science Experience. So IBM Big SQL. IBM Big SQL is our SQL on Hadoop component. It's designed to provide those who query data using SQL with really an easy on-ramp for accessing that data managed by Hadoop. You can actually put any data that's on your distributed file systems. You would be able to query it using simple ANSI-compliant SQL. And it uses its own Big SQL engine. It's actually a massively parallel processing, or MPP runtime, that sits across your Hadoop clusters. So when you run a SQL statement, it's not running MapReduce behind the scenes or anything like that. It's actually running its own high-performance engine. It's also a very open component because underneath it, it's leveraging Hive or HBase. It's leveraging the metadata under there. If there are Hive and HBase tables underneath, or even just text files sitting in your distributed file system, it can access them. And to a user, they just look like standard tables. In addition, Big SQL provides database federation. So this allows you to connect to other data sources on top of Hadoop so that you can actually integrate them in a single connection and view the data or also query data across multiple data sources. And I'm going to show you some of the simple SQL and interface that comes with Big SQL, but you're not limited to the interface that you're going to see. Big SQL, you connect to Big SQL just like you would any other database. There are JDBC and ODBC drivers that are available that you can connect to. In fact, we're going to connect to Big SQL in our Data Science Experience demo, and we're going to use the JDBC driver to do that. But you can also use your own query tool. You can use your own business intelligence tools to connect to them just like you would any other database. Now, the IBM Data Science Experience is really an environment for your data science teams, your analyst teams that allow you, it provides everything that they need to do their analysis. It includes the most popular open source tools. It includes IBM's unique value-added functionalities, and it has community and social features. In fact, the core attribute of Data Science Experience we like to break out into three ways. We call it community, open source, and IBM added value. In community, there are many tutorials and data assets. One of the things that we've seen, especially with data science groups, is that ability to self-learn, to learn from others and collaborate. So we have many tutorials, open data sets, We have articles that other analysts and people have used over time that you can leverage with code to build your own analysis. You can also ask questions. You can connect with other data scientists in the public version of our data science experience. In the private version, you can collaborate with data scientists just within your organization. And when it comes to open source, Data Science Experience offers a plethora of open source capabilities. You can code in Scala, Python, R, or SQL. The most common way to use Data Science Experience is with Jupyter Notebooks, and I'll show you an example of that today. But you also have the ability to use a built-in RStudio development environment. Throughout Data Science Experience, you can leverage Apache Spark for your processing, and you can also incorporate your own favorite libraries if you need it. There are a series that come with Data Science Experience, but you can add ones when necessary. And then we combine that with IBM additional value components, the biggest of which is our IBM Machine Learning, which is just starting to roll out now. This is an open source component, libraries that IBM donated to open source. I think about a year ago they did it, might have been about 2 years ago. And we are integrating services into our Bluemix Cloud environment that would allow you to easily build models that could then be incorporated into the data science experience. I'm not going to cover all these in terms of added value, but one that I do want to mention is projects and version control. So we talked about governance and those essential things to make your analytics work right. With Data Science Experience, you have the ability to create projects and collaborators within those projects. And those projects are assigned to specific data sets. So this allows you to create an environment where a group of data scientists or analysts can work together, but only have access to the data that they need. And they would be able to add their own data sets to it. But if they don't have that access, they can't just sit and pick and choose from everything. So this provides that governance that really is needed, especially when we're using many open source tools, and you get to use this all in one place. So it's really a place to learn, to create, and collaborate. All right, so I talked about the different components of there. Let's do a little bit of a demonstration here. I'm going to go through and show you some components of IBM Big SQL, and then I'm going to show you a notebook that I put together with Data Science Experience and walk you through how it would work from an analyst perspective. Now, I will preface this with saying this is a basic sample of how the Data Science Experience would work. You can incorporate things such as predictive modeling, many different things, much more complex, but I wanted to give you a feel for it, so it's a little bit more of a basic level today. And we're going to do it with some healthcare data, some open healthcare data. Specifically, we're going to do this with what we call data that involves nursing home short stays. I pulled this data off from Medicare.gov. It's open data. It's from the third quarter of 2014 through about mid-2015. And it reports on nursing home short stays. And for those that are not familiar with that, let me describe that a little bit. So what we see is when some patients have hospital visits, there may be extended care that's needed. And instead of keeping them in the hospital for extended stays that can induce a large cost, there's a tendency to send them, there's a possibility to send them to a nursing home for a short period of time to complete their care before going home. Like it says there on the slide, it can reduce costs of normally a long hospital stay. So for a hospital, that's a good thing. There's less cost. For an insurance company, that can be good because they may not have to pay as much. But that's only as good as long as the care remains at a high level. So the data that I have in particular reports on individual nursing homes and events related to short home stays. It identifies events where the patient was sent home without any problems, which is a good thing. But it also identifies where you have a situation where the patient had to be readmitted due to issues that maybe occurred at the nursing home, or maybe an unscheduled outpatient ER visit. And if we see more of those related to particular nursing homes, that's something that maybe the group that I'm in, that I work in whatever healthcare facility, and we may want to do some research and find out why. Maybe it's a nursing home that we need to talk to them, find out what the circumstances are around, or maybe they really just have some problems and maybe we need to exclude them as nursing homes that we work with in the future. All right, so let me back up a little bit here, and I'm going to switch over to IBM Big SQL. All right, so the interface that you're seeing right now is the web-based interface when you connect to IBM Big SQL. Again, IBM Big SQL runs on top of IBM Big Insights, and it also runs on top of Hortonworks HDP. It runs and looks exactly the same. It doesn't matter what it's sitting on top of. This is the home screen that you would see when you log in here. This can be an administrative screen. It's based on IBM Data Server Manager. But as a user, you don't need to connect to this web screen, to this web interface in order to use it. You can simply download the ODBC or JDBC drivers and use your username and password just as you would a standard database to connect to your favorite query tool or your favorite business intelligence tool to move forward. But for purposes of this demonstration, we're going to use this interface here. So if you have the proper permissions and you're an administrator, you would be able to administer the different objects just like you would any other database. One difference with Big SQL is we have an area for Hadoop tables. The particular table that we're working here, I already preloaded. It was a data file that's sitting across the cluster. It's called measures of events. And as you look, I can see in the column here, we have things like provider name, that's the nursing home. We have our provider state, and we have a measure code, which we're going to see throughout the demonstration here. That's a code that identifies the actual description of the type of event that occurred, whether it was a good discharge of the person or whether there was like an ER visit or something like that. And the other key value here to see is what we call observed score. So this particular set of data does an observed scores based on the particular measure code. The higher the observed score, the more problems that there could be. Now, I have this file. This is sitting out on Hadoop, and I want to be able to query it just like I would a standard database table. So I can connect through an ODBC or JDBC connection somewhere, but this interface also provides a SQL querying interface itself that you can run. And I've preloaded a bit of SQL here to show you, for example. And you can look, it looks like just like any other standard SQL statement. In this case, I'm going to take a look at the current state that the nursing homes are in. I'm going to look at the measure codes, and I'm going to get the average of the observed scores. I want to find ones that have a high average observed score. So I put it in the SQL, and I just click Run All, and the SQL executes, and I can click on Data over here to view the results. And we can see there's a lot of different measure codes here. There's different states. There's even some territories in here. I think that's Guam is GU. Here's Delaware. In some cases, there was not enough data to report, so the average score is null. And this is nice. I can export this to an Excel file if I want. I can flip through and see, more records and go through and start to see some average scores and some measure codes for states. And this would be great for basic querying if I'm going to do little bits of information. But I really, as an analyst or my data science group, they need to start digging into this and finding more results and maybe visualizing some things. So Big SQL gives me that access. But it'd be a whole lot better if I had another environment that maybe I could collaborate with some people and show some results. That's where we get into the data science experience. So I'm going to switch over to this tab over here, which is the IBM Data Science Experience. So the data science experience, when you log in, this is what you see, okay? Remember, I mentioned that there were 3 components to the data science experience, one of which was community. And you start to see this up at the top. This is a community of, we call these cards, but they're different things from tutorials to articles. In fact, when you expand this, you get a window much like this, where you can look at articles, even open data sets, and even sample notebooks that people have written. So you can go into them and actually, You can borrow some of their code. There's no reason for you to start from scratch if there's some things that people have already done. So the idea here is to be a collaborative community so that you can all learn off of each other. Now let's go back to the main data science experience that I'm in. The second section here is recently updated projects. So the concept of the data science experience, you would create a project. Projects would have collaborators, which are your data scientists, your analysts, your users that would collaborate. And those collaborators would be assigned to particular projects. These are ones that can then be accessed. Up top, you have a series of menus where you can go through and view all the projects or get into recent ones that you've used. Or you could jump right into RStudio or create yourself a notebook. There's also data services that allow you to create connections and load data and also access object storage. And then there's the community, which I just showed you. I'm going to go over to the projects tab here, and we're going to take a look at all the projects. Now, there's not a whole lot right now. I just have one in here. So I'm going to go into this test project. Now, inside of a test project, we have, in this case, I'm the only collaborator, but I could have other ones in here. But we have several different things. This is just an overview tab. And in here, it shows individual notebooks that I am currently working on or anybody within the project is working on. So there could be collaborators that all have access to this. There are also data assets that have been added in here. Now, these data assets, they can be files that are sitting on object storage. They can be databases. In this case, there's a database here connected to our -DB Cloud database. I have a link here to our, on the particular Big Insights instance that I have. This is the actual HDFS, distributed file system, so I could actually access the files directly. But in this case up here, we're going to be using this data asset here, which is actually Big SQL. This is the same Big SQL connection that I used previously in Big SQL itself. And you can see it just has the simple connection information. I'm going to go back to the test project here, and I'm going to open up one of the notebooks here, this health demo notebook. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with notebooks, this is pretty much what it looks like. If you think about it, it's like a white piece of paper. It's like a notebook. And there are individual cells, and cells can contain things such as just notes and headings, like you see up top here where it says Healthcare Demo Notebook, or it has actual cells with code in it. This particular notebook is set up to use Python. And right now, all you're seeing is a bit of code, but no results. I'm going to walk you through that here in a minute to show how you may work. On the right-hand side, you can see a comment section. This is where collaborators can add some of their information. I can sit here and say, hey, Joe, look at this, code, and I can post it. And that will sit here. It takes a minute to show up. And that'll sit and show up so that when the next collaborator comes in, they can see the note I left. And that's one of these tabs up here in the upper right, is the ability to add comments. Another key one up here is edit, which we're going to go into, which allows us to actually step through the notebook and actually add additional code pieces if necessary. We also up in the right have the ability to share the notebook, which I'll show you in a little bit. And a great piece here is once you create a notebook and create the process that you run through, you can schedule it to have jobs that run on a regular basis to go through. And then there's also data connections. This is if you want to add additional data, and I'll show you that in a second here. And then you can also have quick links into the community. If you find pieces of code or sections or information from particular notebooks that you like, you can quickly access the community from here. I'm going to close this for a minute, and I'm going to walk through the notebook itself. Now, the way you can manually walk through a notebook, so if I was a data scientist or an analyst, I can start writing my code. The first thing I need to do is I need to import some of the particular libraries that I may be using. A lot of these are really set up to connect to a data source, and there's some basics. We use one called PixieDust and Matplotlib to actually create some graphs and plots very easily. And you don't necessarily need to know the intricacies of all of these. There are several tutorials, and in the docs section, which you can access up on the right here, there are code snippets that you can use to copy and paste. But let me walk through this a little bit for you. As we go through each cell, you can individually execute each one as you go through. So I'm currently on this first cell, and up here I can hit this play button, which will run the selected cell. So when I run it, it starts with a little star with inside these brackets next to the in word, and once it completes, it gets a number. And you can see some of the output that's produced. One of the particular libraries called Pixie Dust outputs a statement stating that it was opened successfully. And you can see that result here. These next two cells have to do with setting up the JDBC connection to Big SQL. And I will say these are two that I did copy from some instructions in the knowledge base. These drivers are built into IBM Data Science Experience. You just have to add them in. So I'm just going to execute them so that they get included into our environment. Now, the next type of cell here is really just a descriptive cell. So the idea between these notebooks is that you can share and collaborate with people. So the more notes that you put in, the better this can be. You can add images into these, you can mark them up, you can create links. So you really can create this environment that describes every piece of information that you're doing, if it's a model or some other sort of process, and then have it fully documented, and then you just have to share it out. Whether you're going to share it with other data scientists, whether you're going to share it with a community, or whether you're going to share it with a development team that maybe is going to take this and put it in a more efficient productionized process. It makes it really easy. The next cell is actually credentials. And yes, you can see the username and password here. And don't worry, this system is going away after this webinar, so these won't be here anymore. But I didn't have to write this in here. Because I had this connection already set up, I was able to easily bring this in without doing any code. And I'll show you how I did it. You click on the insert up here in the menu, and I'm going to insert a cell just below, just for an example. And I'm going to go up to my data connections here. And under here, if I had files, I could add files in. But in this case, I'm going to go over to my connections here. And as you saw before, I had 3 different connections. And in this case, I have the Big SQL. So if I just click this insert into code, it's going to take the information from that connection and simply add it in here. And one key feature of this is this hashtag hidden cell above. Right now, I can see the login information. When I go to share this, I can choose to share the information without the login. And what Data Science Experience will do is anything that has that hashtag @hidden_cell label within that cell, it will hide the contents of that entire cell. That way you can protect your connection information and still provide code to somebody else in the community. Now, in this case, it's just basic connection information, and I'll show you how to connect to that in a little bit. But for some of our environments, and Data Science Experience is getting more and more advanced and easier to use every day, some of our environment, for example, our cloud-based -DB database, which we're not necessarily going to use today, but I want to show this to you. You can actually add even additional code that makes it even easier to use. So for example, I may want to insert code for a particular table and put it into a data frame. So in this case, I have the option to insert as a data frame. It actually goes out and connects to -DB, and I can pick an individual table. In this case, I'll pick one just called foo. It's just a fake table with a couple rows in it. And when I hit insert code, it actually writes all the code for me. And in this particular case, the password is actually encrypted. So in this case, you don't even need to see the password. And what this actually does is not only connect to the database, but it actually creates a data frame that you could actually then use going forward in your processing. So that's a nice feature that they have there. I'm going to remove this cell right now because we're not going to need it for our particular notebook. Now we've already executed and brought in the libraries, and I'm now going to execute this cell, which is going to put all these credentials into an array called credentials1. Now we have a simple connect string. This is just going to connect to the database itself using the credentials that were passed in, and that's complete. Now we're going to get to the meat of everything. That was the one-time setup. You get it all ready. You're ready to go. Just like you would connect to any other business intelligence tool or database. You get your connections, you connect, you're ready to go. In this case, we're going to grab some data. Now, when I showed some of the columns in Big SQL, I mentioned the measure codes. And in particular, we're going to be looking for data with measure codes, what are called 522 and 521. 521 is considered a short stay event where the resident was rehospitalized after a nursing home admission. And 522 is a percentage of the residents who had outpatient emergency department visits. These are indicators of problems. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do something similar. We're going to look at provider state and provider name. And we're going to also look at the measure code. And we're looking for high observed scores. So what we do is we use this command in the data frame that actually executes this query against Big SQL, just like I would run a query within the Big SQL interface. And what I have it do is just printing out the first 5 records just to see that I got the information correct. And you can see I have some states in here. I have the actual nursing home names. I have measure codes, and I have the observed scores that I'm seeing. And that's great. I got the data. This is just like Big SQL. What I really want to do is I want to start plotting this. So now that I have the data loaded into what's called a data frame, I can simply execute this display command, which is part of one of the libraries I loaded called Pixie Dust. And this allows us to plot the data and see more relevant information and allows me to dig into the information. So when I run it, you can see it produces a graph like this. Now, I will say I've set this up ahead of time. Normally what would happen is you would get a little screen like this. And much like a business intelligence tool, you can choose the columns that you want to see. So I picked provider state and the average of observed score. And it comes up much like this. I gave it a name. I can adjust. I can ask to cluster it a little bit more so I can see it by something like measure code. I can do many different adjustments. But this allows me to see the initial set of data. I can also change this a bit. I can go in here and I can say, all right, I want to see this as a pie chart. It's going to go and it's going to break it down by a pie chart. Now, when you look at this isn't as telling as the bar chart is, but you can switch between different variables. And there are a large variety of libraries that you can use. There are some that are even more interactive than this. I'm going to go back to the bar chart that we had here. So if we look into our data, these are states on the left-hand side. And if you look at the top, we see Louisiana. Louisiana seems to have the highest average observed scores for some of these bad incidents. So there's also Arkansas in there, but I'm going to start with Louisiana because that's up top. Looks like we got a couple issues to go in there. So why don't we start to dig in and try to find out what are potentially some of the nursing homes that might have an issue that we then need to follow up offline and try to see what really the problem is. So I'm going to continue with my cells here. And I'm going to take this data frame and with a simple command, I'm going to filter it a little bit. I'm going to look for only the state of Louisiana. I'm going to sort it. And then I'm going to display it again in another plot. So we're going to hit play or hit run. And I'm going to get another plot here. All right, so what I'm seeing here now is I'm seeing the list of providers and another graph again. And it looks like I got one that stands out really good. But as you can see, this is a mess. There is a whole lot of providers and I can't read anything. Well, here in this particular library in the data science experience, I can choose to stretch the image. What this does is this breaks out the hundreds of providers into a method that allows me to see it easily. And I'll show you. So you can see it's individual graph line, and it has the provider names. And you can see there's only 5 of them here. But if you move your mouse over the bars and hold and drag your mouse, you can start sliding through from left to right the entire graph and start to see all the individual nursing homes in a method that allows it easier to see. So in this case, this first one is the one we're interested in. So this is that Lynrock Health and Rehab Center. That's really, it looks like they've got, 40% observed score of different incidents that could be a problem. So that's really, at this point as an analyst, I can start to dig into that further. I could potentially use this data in the future to create a predictive model that looks over time as we feed data to kind of anticipate which some of these nursing homes could be a problem in the future. In this case, I'm identifying it after the fact that it's happened. So at this point, my action is really that we need to have our teams look at the Lynn-Rock Health and Rehab Center to see what's going on. Now, at this point, I have my initial bit of analysis, and I need to maybe show it to my management or show it to the team. I can do that easily up here by clicking the share button. Let's see if I click that again. It's coming up. Okay, you get a pop-up window here that will allow you to share the environment with anyone that has the link. Now, for people that just want to see the output results and not the code, I can say only with text and output. And you get this link here. Now, if you were publicly doing things, you can share this on social media. Since we're healthcare, you usually don't want to do that. So you want to send the link to somebody. If we take this link and paste it, it'll just take a second here. And this is what they would get. They would get an output of the notes that you have, which could say this is the process that I went through. Oh, in this case, it's not showing the data, the output. It also should be showing the output. In this case, let me add one that shows everything, including the particular code. So if you've already run the output, it will show the output. Not quite sure why it was doing that. It may not have saved or updated. In this case, I could send the code to somebody. So in here, you're going to actually see the individual environments. In this particular one, I said show all the code, so it's showing the hidden cell. In some cases, if I say to hide it, it will hide that information. But you can share this with anybody who you particularly need. If I click all content, hide everything, exclude sensitive code cells, I'll show you what that looks like. So as you can see, it's the same code, but in particular, this line where the connection credential information, you can see this is hidden. So you can know this is where the credentials are, but hey, we're not showing it to you. But this can show the steps that it all went through. I'm going to turn off the sharing here, and I'm going to close it. And then also, just so you know, you can save particular versions of the code. Now I can go in here and I can say revert to particular versions, or there's also an ability to view the versions, and I was not in the right place, so I'm just going to leave it here. And you can click the particular versions, and you can go back to how the notebook looked at a particular time. Now, if I had additional collaborators in here, they could join into these notebooks. They can add cells. They can add their own notes. They can collaborate with this to produce the end result. And that's what the data science experience is really meant to be. It's meant to be a collaborative space that you can add in your own notes, you can add in your own analysis to identify pieces that maybe you haven't before. The other additional piece that you can do, I now have this notebook up and running. It's pulling particular data from a table. Well, what if that table gets updated? Well, I can actually go in and I can schedule to have this particular notebook run on a regular basis that would produce new output. And you can look at the different versions and see the output from those versions. So it's a nice feature to let that run automatically. If it's something that you want more in a productionized process, you can share the output of this notebook with the production team, and then they can produce a development process around that. And that's the data science experience and Big SQL. Let me just jump back here real quick. So really, like we said, with the data science experience and with Big SQL underneath, you really get a chance to learn, create, and collaborate. Now, there are 3 versions of the data science experience that are available. One is the public cloud, and that is the version that I did the demonstration on today. That is one that you can actually go to datascience.ibm.com/cloud. And I'm going to send a follow-up email to everybody with these links so that you can get to them. You can sign up for I believe it's a 30-day trial, and you can actually play around with it yourself. work with it yourself. We also have our data science or DSX local, which is for what we call our private cloud or your on-premises deployment. And we call it private cloud because it can be done two ways. You can set up servers yourself on premises, or you could do VMs or virtual machines in a cloud provider. IBM provides virtual machines, but you can use other cloud providers too to install data science experience local on there and leverage it the same way you would the public cloud, except in a more controlled environment. And the third version that we have, we call DSX Desktop or Data Science Experience Desktop. This is actually a desktop version that you can download and install on your machine. It provides the same processing capabilities of data science experience. You can run R, you can run Python, you can run those libraries that I showed you there today. What the difference with Data Science Desktop is that it doesn't include the collaboration features. It's really a standalone product, but it gives you that same all the tools in one place environment. And you can download, you can go and download a trial copy yourself and play with that too. And you only have to download the components you want. If you don't want R, you don't have to download it and take it up on your machine. You can just download Spark and download and use Python. It's up to you. So that's really the data science experience. That is Big SQL, and we're using it there to query some healthcare data and to show how we can do our analysis. And we're doing it all in the cloud. And as you can see, I was able to jump right in there and build my insights. I didn't have to sit there and wait for infrastructure to get up, for people to get things set up. And again, it allows you to start creating insights instead of creating infrastructure. And that's all that I have at this point. Brad, can you let me know, are there any questions from the group that we need to talk about?
We have no outstanding questions in the chat. We have a number of folks still online, and if anyone has any questions, you can enter that in the chat or raise your hand and we'll make sure you're not muted.
I'll give a minute. You can, again, if you want to ask a question in the chat, there is the chat section on the left-hand side, and you can type your question in there, and we'll answer it. We'll give it a minute or two here to see if anybody's entering a question in.
There's a question about sharing the slides, and Bob, I'm certain you'll share these with attendees after we're done, correct?
Yes, I'll be happy to share the slides for this. I'll also provide the links for the data science experience, also links for Big SQL. But yes, I will be sharing them after the presentation. All right. Anything else there, Brad?
No, it looks like nothing further. Good shape.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining this webinar.
I'm sorry, Bob.
I'm sorry. We have a question. Go ahead.
I apologize. We did. And we have a question from Prasad, who says, can you talk a bit about prescriptive analytics? Is that something anticipated? Go ahead.
Let me go. I think you're referring to prescriptive analytics, which was on this page. So prescriptive analytics is more of a decision optimization libraries. So there are a series of libraries. In this case, it's called Docs Cloud that are available on our cloud-based infrastructure that allow you to run decision optimization models against your data. I don't have an example right now, but I do have one. I do know that there is one on the data science experience that you can go through and show how it works. So Prasad, what I can do is after this meeting, I can actually get you a link directly to it or show you, if you sign up for the trial for data science experience, how to actually view the notebook that talks about the decision optimization with the prescriptive analytics. So I'll make a note, and after this webinar, I will send you some more detail so that you can look into how that's processed.
Very good. Fernando also asks, is there a chance of collision during development, that is, with data scientists overriding each other's notebook as part of the collaboration process? Do you know I didn't happen to know the answer there, Bob. I don't know if that's one you have offhand or not.
That is a good question. Usually it creates different versions, but I know you're probably talking about, well, if somebody's doing one cell and somebody overwrites another, how does it work? I don't have the exact answer for that, but I can find that out for you very quickly, Fernando, and I'll get you an answer. Just write a note here.
And then Prasad also asks if the notebook is using Apache Spark and cache to databases behind the scenes. It's actually using those connections you set up, right? Well, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's doing a couple things there. So in terms of doing, we'll say like some of the data frame processing, it might be it's using some of Spark behind the scenes. In the case when you're loading into data frames, it might be using caching. In this particular case, I was using a library called IBM DB Copy, which is a little different than using the standard SQL context. That actually tries to push as much down to the database itself as opposed to caching it in memory, but you can certainly do that. In this case, we loaded it into a data frame, and once we started modifying the data frame, it was caching that information. But the actual initial connection, initial data frame, was directly down at the database. It really just depends on the library that you use. So you can actually do it both ways. But the actual processing was Spark underneath is what it was leveraging when it was doing the processing and then creating the graphs behind it. So. And you can specify, you tie the data science experience to a Spark instance that actually runs on our IBM Cloud. It's called our Bluemix Spark instance environment. That instance you can control in terms of executors and things like that. I had the default one. I'll be honest, I don't know what the configuration was behind the scenes, but you can connect to a different set of Spark executors, so you could have different projects set up to different instances.
All right, that's everything we have. That's everything we have in the chat, Bob.
All right, great. All right, well, I will, Prasad and Fernando, I will follow up on your questions, and I'll send you the information. For everyone else, I really appreciate you joining. I thank you for your time, and I really hope that you take a look at data science experience and Big SQL, and really start succeeding in your analytic journey. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.